I'm going to have a bunch of babies so they all can be my friends because he doesn't have any. If you plucked dad out of that society and put him in a completely different society, he would not thrive. She said that. They have been bamboozled for their whole life. Do you think he's ever thought about what it would be like if he left? Because you want to believe that you are free. You want to fool yourself and manipulate yourself into believing you're free.
We still have to tell him every little thing. It's like,
yeah,
that's so annoying.
The dads like micromanage the kids. But it's like, isn't that so exhausting? You already have so many wives, and then...
Well, how else is he going to feel important? Literally, nobody would listen to his narcissistic ideas and ways if he didn't have to coerce them and raise them from birth to do it. It's like
that episode of The Office where Michael Scott's like, I'm gonna have a bunch of babies so they all can be my friends because he doesn't have any. That's how it is with dad. Like, no, if you plucked dad out of that society and put him in a completely different society, he would not thrive.
Well, and he's so self-centered, and he's used to his kids just allowing him to say whatever he wants, and just be as inconsiderate as he is. And if he did that in a normal environment or with just regular friendships and relationships, there's no way they would last. No one would just let you treat them like trash and then say, you still have to tell me everything you're doing, and just be like, oh, okay. No one would.
And that's why people are like, well, why would people be in this place called the Order? Why would anyone want to join? No one really does join unless they're from a Tom Green's family or some other abusive, narcissistic, situation. You're usually born into it or somehow manipulated. Like, Mom was so young when she got manipulated into it, but also she had ties to it because her dad.
Her grandpa was technically a polygamous too, so.
Yep. So the roots ran deep, but just like that, like he doesn't realize that. Like, I like the way Gerald puts it. We lived in fairy tale land in the Order. That's not real. Everything they taught us was not real. But it's so hard for especially narcissists like Dad to believe that they have been bamboozled for their whole life.
Even bigger than that, I truly believe if Dad found out that it was wrong or had some sort of revelation or knew that it was wrong, he would do nothing about it. He built 50 years of his life making sure that everything was set up in the way that his dad wanted him to and that the Order wants it to, and that it basically, he depends on that Order and that organization so much that if it was wrong, I don't think he'd do anything. He's already settled in his life. He's already so old. There's no way that he would just change things up now. There's no way. He's been so committed and he's done it his whole life that he wouldn't even know how. He definitely would not change anything. There's no way.
Do you think he's ever thought about what it would be like if he left?
Oh yeah, everyone has. I bet there's been times when, especially when he was a rebellious teenager, he talks about all the time when he would make fire grenades and he would do that what's that plasma fire stuff across the road so cars couldn't go through, or if they did, the gooey flammable stuff would stick to the tires and basically cast the cars on fire. I
remember those stories.
You never heard about the plasma fire stuff? Well, I've heard stories of him being, like every teenage kid, just doing whatever. And it's like, everyone goes through that. That's why I'm honestly shocked that he's so surprised that we don't want to listen to him, that we want to do our own thing. Because he's been a kid in it too.
Well, it's like, we look at your life, Dad, and it looks like it turned out really great. Your wives love you. But we're going to go somewhere else. But it's like, so I like how they do say in the Order, live by example, right? Show by example. But you don't live the life that it doesn't look appealing for a man or a woman, really. I mean, maybe to some narcissistic men it looks appealing because the women worship the ground you walk on, but someone who actually wants to be in a loving, healthy relationship, that you gotta leave. It's not gonna work there. And if you don't want to marry your cousin, then get out. But the whole thing is just honestly, sometimes I get mad that Dad never contacted me after leaving, but then I also am like, it's a favor to me because talking to the crazy makes you more crazy sometimes. Sometimes I have to heal
especially
from it.
When we were fresh out of it, When you're fresh out of it, sadly, I do feel like I gave Dad lots of control, and he could persuade my thoughts and my feelings, and I don't think he could ever convince me to go back, but I think he could have made me feel more like, oh, I'm making a wrong choice, I'm ruining my life, and this and that. And it's like, when you first leave, you do feel like that way because it's hard. It's like, it's so tough. But it's funny though, because no matter how hard it gets, you would never go back, because the freedom that comes with it, the adventure that comes from just being able to make your own choices, it's like, and that is worth so much.
Realizing how quick they cut you off and how they never really were your family. They never really cared about you. Like, why would you want to run back to that? Yeah. Realizing how fast they're like, you're dead to me. If you run back to that, now you know that they're only fair weather friends. You know that. When you're there, at least you think it's a lovely lie, right? But when you come back, you realize and you know, and you have to live with that. Whereas when you leave, you can find more unconditional, loving relationships. Why on earth would you trade something like that for this? I know it's family. Family's family. But just because they're family doesn't mean they care about you. When you're born into someone's family, they don't instantly have that love for you and want to protect you. Sadly, many women in the order do not have that motherly instinct for their children. They can easily flip that switch and say bye-bye forever. So why are we bending over backwards, following the one above another, following all of Dad's rules, when in an instant he can cut you off and forget about you? Makes no sense.
And when it's pretty easy to tell that even the relationship or whatever connection, how little it is that you can kind of have in the order if you do everything that he says, that you know it's all on condition of you doing everything that he tells you. Like, I would dare you. I've even said this to some of my siblings because, well, mostly to half siblings, because they're always like, oh, I believe in Dad. I know that if I was a good enough person, I can do whatever I want. I have free agency. And I said, I dare you to go to Dad and find if there is any possibility, any way for you to just live on your own. Have your own apartment, still go to church, still read your Bible, still do everything that he tells you to do, but just live on your own. If nothing else, for the experience. You know, what's bad about learning how to be independent, learning how to clean up after yourself, not eating all of Mom's food, whatever, you know? It's like, even to this, my half-brother that was in the order couldn't find anything wrong with it. He knew that if he really wanted to and he had a good heart, he could go and get his own apartment and still be a good order member and still do everything, and he could convince Dad to make it be okay. And the next day I asked him, I was like, so how'd that conversation go? And he's like, we barely even had it. It got shut down so fast. But they hate having those conversations because they like to believe that, sure, I can, but I want to stay at home because it's cheaper, I got to eat Mom's food. They tell themselves all the excuses that they need to make it be like, oh, I don't need to even try to do that with Dad.
Well, yeah, because you want to believe that you are free. You want to fool yourself and manipulate yourself into believing you're free. Because it's almost like you have this leash on you. It's better to believe you can take that leash off any time than to know you can't ever take it off. So it's like you can kind of like blindly be happy thinking that you're free. I was interviewing one of Daniel's girls, and she was saying that like she really did think she was a happy polygamous wife because she didn't realize all the control and how everything was manipulated. She thought that she was getting what she wanted, but in reality it was what they wanted. But her whole life was manipulated to be exactly what they wanted her to be. And then she finally realizes when she's older and her brain's developed, she's like, what is this? I have 12 kids.
And what was interesting is I actually learned, or I was seeing, that most people end up leaving the order around 20 and 25 years old. And then it was later on that I saw that, what was it? I think it was just a YouTube video. Someone was talking about that your brain is not fully developed until you're 25. You're still developing. And it's funny that just happens to be the time that people realize that something is wrong with the environment that they're in and want to leave it when they're finally fully developed.
Well, no one's saying there's something wrong. You live in an environment, in a society where everybody's saying this is what the Lord wants. And your brain's still developing, and then you're married at 16, and you have kids by the time your brain is fully developed. There was times where I would disassociate being in the order, like thinking about, I would daydream all the time, because that's how you kind of make yourself not feel like you're in that reality.
True.
A lot of them like to read like love books or watch Vampire Diaries Mothers, because it's like this fantasy that they'll never have. And I always thought it was weird that moms in the order, like David's wives, would watch Vampire Diaries. But it's because they're as a
desperate
child
for love.
Yeah, as a child, they marry this man who has multiple women, and they're a child. They lose their virginity to this man who don't care. He don't care. And that is the love of their life, and that is all they will ever get to experience, is someone else's man. And they, just like that, they beg for his attention, and they never will get it. They will never. It's a constant rat race. And
that makes
it's depressing.
Yeah, it is all really
What?
sad. Made me think of what that girl said yesterday, though, about how her whole time being made in the order, she had no idea that guys could even get hard.
She said that.
Wow, that's
like,
so
that's
sad.
That's weird.
But that makes you think of some people I've just hear on in the internet all the time where they're like girls that have been made for like 15 years and they've never had an orgasm or something.
Yeah,
it's like,
well, yeah.
whoa.
I think that...
You never know what you don't know, I guess.
A lot of it has to do with uneducated. Like, you're not educating your kids on, like, sexual abuse or the organs and stuff like that. So then it happens to them and they don't realize it's happening.
Mm-hmm,
and I was talking to this person, they said that statistically, I don't know what the exact stats are, but if you teach your kids about periods, pregnancies, their body, they are less likely to be taken advantage of by another person. Because knowledge is power. They know what's going on, so they can stop it. As well as if you teach them that they're allowed to say no, then they'll be able to protect themselves more in the world, even as an adult. But for us, because no was never an option, we're still people pleasers as adults. We don't like saying no because we still have that thing in the back of our head as children, yeah. But it's interesting to think about, like, how Dad is so upset at how we've turned out, when it's like we are the ones that have to heal ourselves from all of the trauma that you gave us, and we're talking about it in hopes that it will help. And if you would just listen, then it will help. It will help you and the kids. But the fact that you're fighting, nope, I'm the best, I know everything, you are in your own way. It's like you're tripping over yourself, because no one knows everything. No one. So you're lying to yourself. But it's what you're saying, like that God complex.
Yeah, and can you imagine in the next life what our dad must think? If he can, we know he's gonna be wrong, but he can't fathom that, and there's no way in the next life if he's wrong. Can you just imagine the feeling that he's gonna have? Mm-hmm. Can you imagine all those 30 kids, those 3 wives, all the people that he had persuaded and worked so hard at making sure they were exactly like him, making sure they were doing what he just knew was right? And then to realize that it's not,
he dies, he's like, why is there fire all around me?
No, I would never be naive enough to be like them and say, oh, they're definitely going to go to hell. Because they say that about us all the time. And it's like, you have to be really naive to think that you just somehow know the will of God and know where someone's going to go. It's
You have to be naive to say, yep, I know that person's going to heaven, that person's going to... It's almost like that, have you ever heard the Lori and Chad Daybell case where they killed their own kids, and they literally had this list, and they were super religious, this list of people that were going to hell and which ones were going to heaven, and they had a point system for each person, like they were gods here on earth, and some of them had to be disposed of. It's kind of like that. I feel like in the order, they got a bad mark over there. Nothing's forgivable too. So it's like everybody's always so scared, which is also why they're so scared of their reputation being tainted. Their reputation matters more than what they actually are doing. But to backtrack back to the heaven and hell thing, I don't believe in that. I don't want anyone thinking that I'm thinking that my dad's going to hell. I honestly think it makes more sense that someone like Dad just has to come back down to earth and keep trying over and over and over until he can start being an open-minded human being. Or he's just going to have to keep on trying to learn those lessons. Unless there's something in the afterlife that teaches you. If there's this whole we live forever type of thing, and we're ever growing, ever prosperous beings, it only makes sense in my mind that we are growing spiritually and evolving. Just like as human beings on this earth, we've evolved since caveman time, right? We no longer own people. Well, I mean, debatable. But it's not legal to do those things that we back in the day could do. Presidents could own people, right? So we're evolving as humans. It only makes sense that when we die, we're evolving our souls, right? To try
Still
to be better and better.
And how cool would it be if it really was kind of like the video game idea? Because, like, I play Fable all the time. It's where you live a life in it. But it's like, it's cool, but it gets boring after a while. But just imagine how cool it would be if I could forget that I'm who I am and just go into that character for that lifespan, you know? Where it's like, to the actual me, it's just the time of a video game. Like, not much time goes by, but in the video game you live a whole life. How cool would it be if you could do it like in this world? It was like that. You're just in this game, experiencing life and doing it to grow and learn. Because I personally think there was something to gain by losing our memory from whatever happened before. Because it's like, otherwise, there's no way I'd be like, oh, so you want to risk going down to this place where you can die or become homeless, go through all these hardships and struggles. But if I just gave you my memory, then you could go through it very well. You could be super successful.
Too easy, yeah.
But it's like, either, it would be too easy, or there's something meant to be learned. Maybe about our personality traits or of something, you know? We're meant to learn something without having all of the information. So it's like,
I used to think, like, so someone like Dad who has oppressed women their entire life, then they're going to have to be born as a woman. Or, be born in a abusive relationship so they know exactly what it's like to be on that end. But then, again, I know some narcissists who will be treated exactly the way that they're treating others, and then they're just like, what? Like, they don't understand. They can't comprehend that they're also doing that.
Oh.
Like, have you ever met someone like that? I feel like Dad's one of those where even if someone were to treat him exactly that way, he himself would not be able to relate the two, to correlate that he also was doing that.
Like being unsympathetic, basically.
Yeah. And he has been treated that way by higher ups telling him, like, you need to just do what we say. And I'm sure he doesn't like the no reason. And then he does it to other people. It's like when the bully gets bullied at home and then he goes and bullies somewhere else and he doesn't realize what he's doing.
I do think he had less, though, because like that, his dad was hardly ever around. He didn't have to report back to him for super long, you know. It's like, I think the only reason why in his head it all works out so great and dandy because of, I guess, his situation. Like, it's just so convenient for him, so it's easy for him to be like, yeah, this is the right way, because it's nice for him, but not anybody else.
Yeah. It's fun to analyze him because otherwise it's so easy to just not like him. But I like to analyze and be like, he's not like, no one's born like that. He was made that way, you know? And I honestly think if he was born on the outside, he'd probably be a pretty nice person.
You think so?
I think so. I think that the person he was when he was a kid was a pretty nice person.
Well, he was bullied a lot as a kid, too, though.
That's probably why
Remember
he was
all those stories, man?
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Because he was pushed around, and so he didn't like that, so maybe he was nicer at that time because he didn't want to do that to other people. See, where did he lose that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he does come from a crazy environment. That's why I always go back to, it's like, he had a worse dad. Oh, I just died. Darn it.
I thought it was plugged in.
That's good. It is plugged in. That's what's weird. I think, though, it was really low when I plugged it in, so maybe it records.
I feel like... I'm like, what? It's
Hello?
literally going to be 3 seconds. No one even makes it to the end of the video anyways.
Yeah, they do.